When Doom 3 came out on August 2004, it was id Software's biggest commercial success at the time. However, although the premise was kill demons in a specific area just like the original, the high-paced action was replaced with tight spaces, darkness, and an increased feeling of dread. id, the developers that created the online deathmatch, were on top of the gaming market, and there was even a movie called Doom the next year which shouldn't have been released. But comparing 1993 to 2004, the gaming world had changed. Not only was the cost of AAA titles higher, along with the reliance of a larger team, but the popularity of the first-person shooter was at its peak even to this day, which meant id Software were facing serious competition. But John Carmack stuck to his principles. He created another small team and plans for a new game engine for the next Doom sequel. Fans knew a future Doom title was unlikely. 4 years after Doom 3 was released, on May 2008, Doom 4 was officially announced by id with the premise of demons coming to Earth, just like the second game. They went deep into development, but progress was unsurprisingly slow. But at least they knew they didn't want to end up like their old pals at 3D Realms. During development, they gave their IPs to other developers to make sure id Software didn't lose money during the development of Doom 4, which led to games like Quake 4 and Wolfenstein: The New Order. Their independence kept the team close while publishers wouldn't interfere. However, by 2009, Doom 4 was still far away from completion, and trends indicated the company would be in trouble financially. So after years of refusing offers by publishers, the company was finally purchased by ZeniMax in 2009, which meant more developers could work full-time on its projects and release games at a higher rate while continuing progress on Doom 4. But in 2011, the reason for its development hell was not just because of Carmack's reliance on a small team, but their thoughts on the initial prototype were negative. According to the development team, it had way too many similarities to the Call of Duty series. Today that would raise a planet-sized red flag, and it didn't have the spirit or personality the predecessors had. They concluded it was rubbish and decided to start all over again with a new engine. Things weren't looking good, and if that wasn't enough, one of id Software's most important figures walked away. John Carmack had a massive fascination for virtual reality and always worked between this kind of technology and the new engine for the Doom reboot. He decided that he couldn't balance the two together and instead put primary focus on his true passion, becoming the last co-founder of id Software to resign in 2013. As of this review, John Carmack is the Chief Technology Officer of Oculus VR. With worries of it becoming the next Duke Nukem Forever joke, a trailer was released at E3 and QuakeCon in 2014 with the title now simply Doom, with so many of the elements relating back to the predecessors with its over-the-top style and heavy metal soundtrack. A beta version was released the same year to those who pre-ordered Wolfenstein: The New Order, and a lot of multiplayer alphas came out during the release year. With over a decade of development, also I had a PlayStation 2, not an Xbox, I never thought the Doom reboot was worth getting excited over. On top of that, around the early 2010s, I was getting fed up with first-person shooters overflowing the market, like I completely lost interest in the genre. But after playing Wolfenstein: The New Order after getting a PlayStation 4, I really liked it and became a little interested in what id Software had to offer, even though it was technically made by Machine Games. Then I went to RTX 2016 when Rooster Teeth came to Australia for the first time. Doom was everywhere. The teaser trailer popped up nearly every single time before a new panel started with an ovation. The logo was all over the pass, and there was even a Doom bar. Lines were endless, so I'm going to assume it looked like this in there. But you get the idea. It finally got my attention, and id Software were very close to kickstarting one of the most important games ever made. And the development team, without any of the co-founders, knew they had to pull off something incredibly special to meet expectations. It had been over a decade. Before playing the reboot, I played the 1993 original to find out what made this series so groundbreaking. Despite being decades old, it's now one of my favorite games, and I found the story of id Software as a developer very fascinating. But now I've got a copy of the reboot. Was the 12-year wait worth it?
I think we can work together and resolve this problem in a way that benefits us both.
During an unknown time in the future, Earth is in the midst of an energy crisis, and humanity traveled to Mars and even the fiery depths of hell to collect whatever they could get their hands on. The project, led by android Samuel Hayden, also collect demons and their artifacts for research.
I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind.
That plan backfired as all hell breaks loose, literally, and Samuel Hayden wakes up the Doom Marine in desperation, with minor support from Vega, who reminds me of Clank from Ratchet & Clank.
Hello, I am Vega, the sentient intelligence assigned to Mars. After running diagnostics on the Praetor suit, it appears that I can activate optional challenges.
We have no time for trivial matters, sir.
The Doom Marine must contain the demon invasion of Mars and stop them from reaching Earth, which is being facilitated by rogue android Olivia Pierce.
You could not have saved them anyway.
So there's not much to say and the character development is lacking, but that's the point. The developers' intentions were to not take it seriously. In fact, they were encouraged to be juvenile in their approach, unlike Doom 3. John Carmack once said that story in a video game is expected to be there, but it's not that important. The developers were using that philosophy to its advantage, and what you have is one purpose: get that crucible at all costs. And there isn't much distraction to hold you back. Just a crazy environment and you feel like the most powerful being over anyone else. Must say, it has the story of the original Doom.
I'm sorry for the jolt, but I didn't think you'd allow its installation voluntarily.
But because id Software have now reached id Tech 6, you also have a look that simply overwhelms players the same way the predecessor did in 1993. They deliberately made it so over the top, and that's how a Doom game should look. You have a science fiction grindhouse video game where you play as a freak of genetics, fighting demons on space stations on Mars and in hell itself.
The only flesh and blood to walk between dimensions.
It doesn't make sense, but it's creative, made even more impressive by the fact that this idea was already done decades ago, but is taken to 11 in this. I can't even fathom what the sequel will look like next. If I have a criticism, you get a bit of texture pop in when you restart, but that's about it. I have no serious complaints about the presentation. It's a love letter to the 1993 original. And that soundtrack. It was composed by Mick Gordon, who did the music for Need for Speed Shift, the 2013 Killer Instinct, and Wolfenstein: The New Order. He did his best to respect the original soundtrack while making it sound modern, and delivered big time, because it's fucking epic. Rip and Tear in particular is one of the best pieces of music I've ever heard in a video game. Rock and heavy metal are my favourite music genres, so of course I was going to love the soundtrack even before I played it. I was just in awe of how heavy and twisted it was, like 9 Inch Nails, Slayer and classic Doom combined. Quite a coincidence considering that Trent Reznor worked on the soundtrack for Quake. If you play the older Doom games and use this soundtrack, it would blend in perfectly. In the campaign, you're always jumping from space station to hell, and it almost feels like you're playing multiplayer, slaughtering enemies one by one in dozens of arenas, when the gladiator is literally the last man standing. That sounds like a premise that would get repetitive after an hour. After all, there are only 2 primary locations, and you fight the same enemies from start to finish, with a new one popping up on occasion. Then on the last set, you're taking on every enemy type in high quantities. Most of the demons you see have made at least one appearance in a previous Doom title, including the Cacodemon, Revenant, Demon, and the Baron of Hell. But somehow, it isn't repetitive. The high-speed gameplay keeps you on your toes, and whenever you complete a level, you feel like you need to take a break. Apart from being able to aim freely and jump, the gameplay is almost exactly like the 1993 original. In fact, I would say it feels more like Quake. You can't just go into cover, regenerate health, and pick enemies off. You have to keep moving and shooting non-stop, and the second half of the campaign is an absolute frenzy. Doom Guy has the speed of an Olympic sprinter, the strength of a bodybuilder, and every skill imaginable. With the way he's kicking ass, the controls don't even need to be explained. I think you get the idea. Health can be gathered in high quantities through melee attacks. Man, they're brutal. Ammo can be cut open with a chainsaw, even more ruthless, and the rest are scattered all over the map. Boring. Weapons don't reload, they're always low on ammo, and are mostly based off the predecessors. From the pistol to the shotgun, railgun, plasma gun, all the way to the big fucking gun 9000. It ain't no Doom game without it. One mistake almost leads to instant death. Sometimes you can be low on health, then 1 second your health is full. And there are always special time power-up spheres including quad damage and berserk, just like the predecessor. And don't forget to pick up any colored keys and skulls which are mandatory for progression. At the end of a few levels, you get a boss battle. Special tip, each boss apart from the final one has 2 bosses in one, so keep that in mind. You get a map of the entire level which can be accessed from the menu along with codexes, power-ups, upgrades, perks, alternate fire modes, and Argon energy cells. All of these can be unlocked through secret areas, room trials, and demon slaughterhouses. You can even say it mixes in the RPG genre. Like the Ratchet & Clank remake, it can be a little overwhelming at first, but a few hours into gameplay, it becomes manageable. It's possible to beat Doom without finding all the secrets, but these power-ups and upgrades really come in handy. Unless you're an achievement hunter or addicted to the predecessor way back when it first came out, then sweep up the joint. If you're really lucky, you can find a classic room hidden in the levels, which is a nice little Easter egg. I can imagine id Software being impressed with Machine Games when they added a Wolfenstein 3D level to the New Order. This is how a reboot should be done, staying true to the original while adding tons of replayability, and looking $1 million at the same time. Whether you're a fan of the original Doom or modern first-person shooters, you'll be blown away with what this has to offer. This is Quake, with a Doom story, presentation, and 8th generation polish, and it gets a 9 out of 10, pretty close to a 9.5. Doom is one of the best games of 2016, and a return to form for the series. For all you Doom fans, the 12-year wait to fight like hell was worth it. It delivers on everything you could have hoped for. Let's just hope we don't have to wait another decade for a sequel, but at the same time, hope they don't release it too soon.